I want to talk a little bit about removing the complexity of manual labor. So, when we're transitioning from lab bench processes to manufacturing, I think it's pretty common to underestimate scalability. And so, for example, automation can eliminate that variable human factor um, of manual processes. And so, uh, Mitch, I'll start with you. I just wanted to get your thoughts on, in what ways do perhaps automation, robotics, or 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 others, remove the complexity when producing or manufacturing a cell and gene therapy.
Yeah, I think this is a good example actually of where our matching of biologics expertise with the gene therapy science comes into play. So most of our equipment is actually straight out of biologics in the gene therapy space. So we do batch processing from our upstream cell expansion, transfection, down through our unit operations and the purification and filling side. And so, each of those unit operations has a fairly commercially available off the shelf, even though we're a preclinical company that we get to take advantage of from an automation perspective. So that's certainly one area there. And because we have borrowed heavily from the biologic space, we have lots of access to talent who know how to use that equipment very effectively and efficiently, troubleshooting and learning the gene therapy process. I would add one more area that we've really focused heavily on here with the number of programs we have, which is connectivity of that equipment, and bringing in a pretty sizable operational technology group or OT group that helps us capture that data and contextualize it for improved visibility and reporting and evaluation. So we spend a lot of time evaluating our data, and automating all of that has helped us tremendously. The other place, in this industry, which is still somewhat immature, knowledge is really important. And so capturing the data off of our testing throughout the process is important. So we automate a lot of our lab equipment to try and drive efficiency so that testing never gets in our way. We're never bottlenecked there. So we spend a lot of time automating the testing and reporting of that data so that people can use it to move more quickly.
Okay. I want to cover one other topic before we get over to our audience Q&A. And I want to get your thoughts on a hybrid model. So, every company needs to find the development strategy that fits their business and, fosters the success of their product's journey to the clinic. So, okay, fine, because patients are counting on them. But, in your perspective, either at your own company or just your thoughts on the topic in general, is it possible to utilize prefab units or modular designs versus, say, a full build out, right? Or are there other less costly alternatives? Will, can I start with you for that one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's absolutely possible to use prefab, pod technology to manufacture within. Again, it's required. What you really need to know to do that is, what is your capacity supposed to look like? How many of these pods do you need? What's the square footage that you get from a manufacturing capacity out of that? And then, Mitch, your experience is great with the biologics part, right? To be utilized within the manufacturing processes. We don't really have that luxury. For us, the equipment that we have found on the market is not really, at this point mature enough, or hasn't been mature enough for industrialization. So we had to work with a lot of our OEMs on improvements around that. They fit into those prefab units really well, and so if I would go into my own startup, I would definitely consider that as a very good alternative to completely configure from scratch.
Okay. Mitch, I'd like to ask you the same question, and I'd like to add on, your thoughts. What are your thoughts on building for phases 1 and 2, and then outsourcing to CDMOs thereafter. But first, of course, about the prefab units. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Prefab is an option, and it's a strong one, and you can kind of see it across the industry. Lots of people have done it and are still continuing to do it. And there's actually competition in this space now, which I think is wonderful to help bring some innovation and drive down the cost and timelines for prefab. I think it comes back to the decision to use or not use comes back to really your criteria in your organization. If you need, I think Will mentioned it earlier, if you need a lot of flexibility, prefab may slow you down. It may be more expensive depending on where you are. There's a lot of things that just to work through and consider. In the situation here, we actually, I'll say, stumbled on a building that had a lot of clean room infrastructure, but the clean rooms weren't quite set up. So we did a full evaluation of clean room module pods versus stick built, and we ended up going with stick built because we could do it faster and cheaper. But in the end, I think either would have been successful for us. In terms of thinking about early phase versus late phase and launch, I think a hybrid model there actually makes a lot of sense. I still go back to you need to sort of model out what the drivers are. So cost of goods, reliability of supply, what countries you're going to be launching in, and dual supply strategies. There's a lot of things that factor into that, but certainly, building for phase 1, 2 gives you the control. If you've hit the critical mass of programs, and then outsourcing afterwards would be a strong candidate to match to that, or perhaps a dual launch strategy where you do some internal and some external would be another one I would support. Sort of off the cuff.